This is the 6th video of a series in which I analyze in depth all the different aspects of the Mavic Mini. More specifically, it is the second part of a beginner's guide to this tiny drone. In this video I will suggest a few basic settings for the first week of flying. Then I will explain how the new interface DJI FLY works. I will show how to use the remote control for many cinematic moves. And finally, a few safety tips at the end. If you want to go more in depth on specific topics regarding the Mavic Mini, you can check my other videos of the series. I will post a link to the Mavic Mini playlist at the end of this video and in the description below. If you're interested in the Mavic Mini or in drones in general, I suggest to subscribe to my channel, the home of fearless drone heroes. The new app DJI FLY looks much cleaner and uncluttered compared to the classic DJI Go 4 of other models. I like it. All functions are very easy to find, although it must be said that the Mini has far less features than other models. Before taking off, let's just adjust some useful settings, which we can access by tapping on the 3 dots on the top right of the screen. Since this is our first flight with this drone, we limit our maximum flight height and our maximum distance. Remember that the Mini doesn't have any obstacle avoidance, so it is really recommended to fly in visual line of sight. And be aware that the distance of sight is much lower than other models due to its small size. After analyzing the surroundings, we also set the return to home altitude. Once again, we want to set it quite high to make sure we are above any trees, buildings, power lines, hills, as the Mini will not be able to detect them. All these settings are on the Safety tab, the first one on the left. By scrolling on the bottom of the tab, we find Advanced Safety Settings, where we can enable Payload Mode in case of flying using the propeller guard, which is useful in confined space or when flying indoors. In the Control tab you can choose the units, metric or imperial, according to your personal preference. This video is very focused on flying, so I will not go deeply into video or photo, as I've already covered this topic in depth in another video. Please refer to this one for all things regarding exposure. In the Camera tab, by clicking on Advanced Shooting Settings, we can turn on the histogram, which is very useful to judge the luminosity of a scene. I also like to turn on the grid lines to check the horizon and to apply the rule of thirds. We're now ready to get this thing up in the sky. Try to find an open spaced area, far from roads, people, buildings, tall trees and power lines. Don't forget to take out the plastic gimbal guard. On top of the DJI FLY screen, on the status indicator, we have this message: take off with caution, no GPS signal. Also, a bit to the right, an icon in red indicates that we don't have enough satellites. This is due to the fact that I'm taking off from a balcony shielded by the GPS signal. This is to show you that the Mini is able to fly even without GPS signal, as it is the case when flying indoors. Always check the message on the status indicator. It normally shows takeoff permitted, but it can also indicate some tasks to perform, like calibrate the compass or the IMU, or unblock the gimbal, or weak signal transmission. Also, it can warn about a no-flight zone, in which case the drone will not take off. You will find instruction on the different calibrations on the first part of this beginner guide. To the left of the screen we have the takeoff icon. If we tap on it, this message will appear. Press for a couple of seconds until the circle is completely green, and only then release. The aircraft will hover at about 1.5 meters of height. On the menu on the right I choose Video and hit the recording button. If we keep an eye on the satellite indicators, we notice that after a few seconds it will connect with enough satellites and turn white. Immediately after, the home point will be updated, so that the app knows where to land in case we hit return to home or in case of loss of signal. Next to the satellite number indicator, there are icons for signal strength, battery level and remaining flying time. On the top left there is the mode indicator. The default is position. Sport is faster and I don't recommend it use it for beginner, as it is a bit dangerous and anyway not very useful for video. Actually, I hardly never use it myself. Cine Smooth is the one I recommend using for the first few weeks, much safer. Also, the flight is much smoother with seamless results on the footage. On the bottom left we have indicators for the height and ascending and descending speed, as well as another one for the distance from the home point and the horizontal speed. At the bottom in the middle there is an indicator of the position of the drone relative to the home point. These info are extremely useful to bring the bird back home if we should lose sight. Although for safety reasons I strongly recommend to have the drone always in line of sight. I suggest to always take off with the camera facing away from you, because if it faces the operator, the control will be reversed. When pushing the sticks to the right, the drone will go left, and so on. This causes confusion at the beginning. Now let's start to get used to the flight controls on our remote controller. The right stick determines in which direction the drone will fly. Let's make some squares by pushing the right stick forward, then to the right, backwards, and then left. Obviously, by pushing the stick all the way, the aircraft will go full speed, while we can control the speed with smaller movement of the stick. Let's practice a bit to get used to a controlled and seamless speed. Still using only the right stick, let's try now to push in between forward and horizontal. Let's say between 1 and 2 o'clock. The drone will move in a diagonal direction. We can practice this movement a bit, trying to draw an X shape. Let's move now to the left stick. If we push it forward, the altitude will rise until the maximum one we set in the preferences. The opposite, of course, if we push backwards. If we push to the right or to the left, the bird will rotate horizontally while hovering on the same spot. Let's try now to move the stick between 1 and 2 o'clock. The drone goes up while simultaneously rotating to the right. Not a particularly cinematic move. But let's try to tilt the camera downwards at 90 degrees, facing the ground for a top-down shot. In order to do that, we use the wheel in the remote controller. If we now push the left stick diagonally in any of the 4 directions, things will become more interesting. It is the famous screwdriver effect that we have seen in many Hollywood movies. It is a very cinematic movement, but requires some practice in order to control the speed and the direction. Now we can start using the 2 sticks at the same time for more complex moves. Let's push forward with the right stick and very slightly to the left with the left one. The aircraft will advance, making a gentle turn to the left. Let's practice this move until we're able to perform some figures of 8. Now we can push forward with both sticks to have an ascending movement while moving forward. And then the opposite, going backwards while descending. We can then do the opposite. Move forward descending and backward ascending. The idea is to get used to perform these moves in a smooth, controlled way at constant speed. Static panning movements in drone footage are very boring. A much more interesting way is to add a second and possibly a third dimension to the move. Let's have a panning view while moving backwards. So we push back with the right stick, while very gently pushing to the left with the other one. Sadly, the Mini has a very abrupt yaw movement, and it cannot be adjusted in the settings like in all other DJI models. This makes it really hard to achieve a smooth panning. It helps being in cine smooth mode, but still a good deal of practice is needed to push the left stick only very slightly to the sides and to maintain the same position. But as you can see, the move is now much more interesting. We can add even a third dimension by ascending during the move. The movement of the right hand is the same, but the left one this time will move somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock. Then we can add the tilt of the gimbal. A classic reveal shot is by starting with the gimbal looking downwards and flying low, and then while moving forward we ascend and smoothly tilt the gimbal up using the wheel, thus revealing an important feature of the scenery. Often it is even more interesting when moving backwards. Note that the response of the wheel can be adjusted to our test in the settings. In the Control tab, go to Advanced Gimbal Settings. I like to decrease the value of pitch speed and also to increase a bit the value of smoothness, so that it will not stop in an abrupt way. Also, I prefer to enable upward gimbal rotation, allowing for an extra 20-degree upward tilt above horizontal. If at any time you should get a message of weak signal or lost signal, don't panic. Try to modify the direction of the antennas, in some cases it might help. If there is a loss of signal for several seconds, the drone might start a return to the home point. While it is flying back towards you, chances are that the signal will improve, in which case you can regain control of the aircraft. This is why it is important to set the correct height for return to home, considering all the surrounding obstacles. In case you move during the flight, you can update the return to home point by going on the tab Safety. If anything goes wrong and your drone should hit an obstacle and fall, you can use the feature Find My Drone to find it, as long as it still has some battery power left. In the Safety tab, scroll down to Find My Drone. The position of the bird will be shown in the map, and you can also hit Start Flashing and Beeping. Ouch, quite loud. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for weekly videos about drones and also videography and photography in general. Bye for now.